Hey guys, welcome to another episode of All Things Reviewed. Just want to say please subscribe. Today we're looking at X-Men 97, the new episode. Kind of have mixed emotions. I mean, the last episode with Wolverine gave me mixed emotions as well. Yeah, sorry, I think this one fits that mold. Um, I'm not sure what to make of it though. Pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, let's get into the review.
Every week I would.
Yeah, let's get into it though. I thought that was fair. I'm not sure why Nightcrawler got involved, to be honest.
Against you.
The delay.
quick to send his new team to remedy the situation. Of course, Dr. Cooper's still on his back over the jurisdiction of the X-Corp and the X-Men, but this is a more confident and straightforward Xavier who just says that his X-Men are already on their way, and Cooper's men wouldn't like where they were headed. The whole team is there as they head to the Savage Land in their aircraft. We have Polaris, Bishop, Rogue, Beast, and Nightcrawler as they go to rescue Graydon Creed, a man who surely doesn't deserve saving. The dilemma of Nightcrawler. Honestly, this is one of my favorite X-Men, even though he's criminally underrated. At least the show gives him his due, and in this episode, where he truly stands out. To start things off, this is a complicated situation for Nightcrawler because Graydon Creed happens to be his stepbrother. After all that Nightcrawler has endured over the years, including being abandoned by his mother Mystique, he still has a heart of gold, and his theory is that nobody is beyond saving. He hopes to make peace with the situation at hand and also save his brother in the process, and thus he goes along as part of the X-Corp headed to the Savage Land. Beast's prediction quickly turns out to be true. As you would expect, Beast is the one piloting the aircraft as the X-Men head to the Savage Land, and he gives them a quick rundown of the way the place works. This is a place frozen in time with numerous threats waiting to kill anyone daring to intrude. Rogue barely makes a joke about Beast's ominous warnings when they get attacked. Beast detects a familiar energy field similar to the signature established when Mr. Sinister attacked, and Bishop feels an immediate radiation surge running through his body. Before long, they're hit by a surface-to-air missile and the craft starts to go down. Rogue discovers that her powers aren't working, and it's the same with everyone else. And to make matters worse, Bishop falls through the wrecked aircraft. Polaris jumps in after him and barely saves the fall with a parachute for them for a soft landing, but the Savage Land is far from safe. The T-Rex cameo and the spark between Bishop and Polaris. Is it just me or did y'all notice some chemistry between
Yeah, there was chemistry from the jet, yo. That was some cute chemistry. I liked it. I liked it.
Bishop and Polaris? I mean, they said during the flight that they're familiar with each other's files, and the way Polaris jumps in after was pretty commendable. Also, the landing is adorable as Polaris lands right on top of Bishop. Of course, this is no place for romance, and they quickly find out when a distant thud on the ground grows nearer, and then a T-Rex walks right past. I mean, this is the Savage Land, and it wouldn't be complete without a decent dinosaur cameo. But Bishop is not alright. The energy surge that hit the jet earlier is running inside his body without him being able to release it. Mr. Sinister's old inhibitor tower at work. We quickly find out what made the X-Men powerful all of a sudden. On the ground, Polaris tells Bishop about Mr. Sinister's old inhibitor tower that's probably been rebooted by the Acolytes to suppress all their mutant powers. But for Bishop, time is running out, and they have to find a fix soon. As of now, they have to find the others because they landed far away from the crash site, and the mission is just getting started. Colossus rescues the crashed X-Men. Bishop and Polaris might be out there in the woods, but others like Rogue, Beast, and Nightcrawler crash land with the jet. They're rescued from the wreckage by none other than Colossus himself. I think it's a nice little detail that reinforces the fact that he's basically a nice guy with no intent for malice. Nightcrawler's his old friend, and he hasn't forgotten their camaraderie. However, when the X-Men tell him why they're there, he simply refuses to hand over Graydon Creed. Even Nightcrawler's pleas fall on deaf ears, and in order to seek an audience with the captive, Nightcrawler gives an interesting proposition. He offers to be allowed to see the place so that he can have an opportunity to have a change of heart. Of course, this would be a huge boost for the Acolytes if the X-Men approve of their ideology and Colossus agrees. The philosophy of life in the Savage Land. You can't blame someone like Colossus for following an extremist like Exodus because of the life offered in the Savage Land. It's just what mutants would seek. It's a simple life with food, water, power, and simple concern. Colossus talks
Yeah.
about how Exodus found him in a dark state and managed to give it purpose. Beast is quick to remind him that his sister would never have been okay with him joining the Acolyte, but Colossus simply dismisses the
She's not
suggestion by
here.
saying that we could never know about the desires of the dead. Now, the only downside to this is that Exodus is as filled with hate as Graydon Creed, and it will soon be Judgment Day for them both. Graydon Creed remains defiant even in captivity. Finally, the X-Men are led to meet the captive Graydon Creed, and the meeting goes just as you'd expect. Creed finds the computer.
Man, I think Professor X was wrong. I think the X-Men are on the wrong side of this. I think X-Men 97 is, I guess because the audience is older, we can see now that X-Men are kind of like morally gray. I don't agree with all their decisions, right?
Compassionate sermons of his stepbrother meaningless, and his hate for mutants is written all over his face. As despicable and horrible as a man might be, he still has the guts to stand on his own twisted principles, even when he's faced with death. But Nightcrawler Nightcrawler remains strong on his own ideals of forgiveness and acceptance, and he demands a fair trial, which is a memorable scene in this episode. Exodus tempted with overwhelming odds for a fair trial. Nightcrawler's keen on a fair trial for his brother to determine if he's really beyond all hope of redemption. Now, this is a bold demand, and even Exodus acknowledges the same, given that the trial will be held on the Savage Land. Nightcrawler has the power of fate, and he believes that his brother is worth redeeming, and he hands out a proposition that's too good to refuse. He promises to join the Acolytes
Man, Mystique's been involved with so many people.
if Exodus wins, and this will be a signal for mutants across the world to the fact that even an X-Man could be convinced to join their cause. He just wants Colossus to preside over the trial, and Exodus agrees. Polaris and Bishop come up with an idea. Away from all the courtroom drama, Polaris and Bishop are having a fun time of exploring the forests of the Savage Land. They come across the wreckage of their jet, but with no signs of the X-Men.
I guess his mutant power is to like discharge energy. So I guess he can't. I guess if he takes in energy too long, it would kill him. But his mutant power is like to discharge energy.
Bishop simply gathers his gun. They realize that they need to destroy the inhibitor tower to get their powers back if they have a chance in rescuing the missing X-Men and a captive Graydon Creed. Polaris has this twinkle in her eye, which immediately tells me that she's thought of an absurd idea and
Yeah.
will soon see it unfold. The dramatic trial begins. Colossus is the judge, and Exodus and Nightcrawler get the opportunity to plead their case, starting with Exodus. I hate to say he makes a pretty compelling case for himself, pointing out all the anti-mutant activities that Grady Creed did. He reminds everyone that Creed was responsible for the Friends of Humanity group. He created a virus to kill mutants, and even tried to frame a mutant for killing the president. He argues that the humans would never punish him for his crimes, which makes it the responsibility of the mutant to bring him to justice. Nightcrawler takes a very different direction. Instead of trying to argue Creed's crimes, he explores the root cause of this mutant hate. He reveals how Creed was mistreated by his father, Sabretooth, for having no powers, and how he never received love from his mutant parents. Now, if you ask me, Nightcrawler might make sense, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that Creed is guilty. I mean, you can't argue that a serial killer is innocent because his family mistreated him as a child, right? This wouldn't hold in a court of law, but
That's
it
a
seems
good
like
point.
Colossus is hesitant in delivering his decisions, and this is where things go south. The final conflict with the Acolyte. Exodus probably senses that the verdict isn't going to go in his favor, and he doesn't even wait for it. He attacks Colossus straight away, and he nearly kills him before Bishop and Polaris intervene. As it turns out, their grand plan was to ride flying dinosaurs and shoot at the inhibitor tower enough to destroy it. Once it's done, the X-Men have their powers back, and it becomes a fair fight. I particularly love the duel between Exodus and Nightcrawler, where they both seem evenly matched until Nightcrawler outwits him and has him cornered. However, Creed pulls off another one of his nasty moves. He picks up a fallen laser gun and shoots Exodus dead. He even tries to hold Nightcrawler hostage in order to escape, but Polaris is about to kill him when Nightcrawler teleports away with his brother just in time. Is it justice? I really like how the episode establishes that there's nothing to support the evil of Graydon Creed. He's too far gone to be changed, and even Nightcrawler realizes this. He teleports him to an icy terrain and leaves him there to his fate. He finally knows that Creed cannot be redeemed, and it all works out for the X-Men because Xavier's promise of retrieving Creed stays true. He's later found alive, and Dr. Cooper has nothing to say about the flawless mission. However, if you ask me whether Creed got justice, I'd have to disagree. He definitely deserved to be punished, and not just because he killed Exodus, but because his stance against mutants hasn't changed a single bit. Nevertheless, X-Corp has its first victory, and I'm sure there will be many more to follow now that the ultimate danger is looming large. The big reveal by Team X-Force. The story ends and we get the teaser that serves as a reminder of what's about to come next. Cable and his X-Force team finally locate the secret lair of Apocalypse under the Parthenon in Athens, Greece. The only problem is that they've arrived a little too late. Also, what they discover is rather unexpected. As they explore the place, they discover the shriveled up and decaying skeletal remains of Apocalypse and a single playing card left behind. Now, I don't need to tell you that the card obviously belongs to Gambit, who's already been transformed into one of Apocalypse's horsemen. But what's the deal with Apocalypse's dead body here? Is Apocalypse dead? Well, of course he isn't, because such a big event wouldn't be taking place off screen. Also, the hardened comic book fans know that there's actually a precedent for this. In the comics, there have been times when Apocalypse has been seemingly killed, although none of his deaths have been permanent. For instance, in the Age of Apocalypse,
Yeah, I don't like that episode, man, because he actually killed the guy. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that episode. I don't think it was good. Still created that great era for the X-Men. Um, I would have liked to hear Colossus' verdict. So overall, I didn't really like the episode. I think it was kind of the worst episode. Um, I think it was. Well, let's see what other people are saying. Yeah, let's look at it philosophically. Because I really didn't like that episode, and then we'll look at the kids of Mystique. Should be interesting. Let's get into this. Hey, remember to subscribe, guys.
Thing I'm least comfortable saying. But halfway through this episode, I caught myself feeling sorry for Graydon Creed. And I wrote it down while I was watching exactly like this. Somehow they're making us sympathetic with Graydon Creed. I don't know how to handle that. And I still don't really. Graydon Creed, the man who founded the Friends of Humanity, the man whose whole public career is built on getting people like the X-Men registered and rounded up. Now look, today's conversation about this episode is not going to be about any of that. Okay, it's going to be about the last 90 seconds where X Force walked into that temple,
Oh, really?
Rocklet is on the floor, and there's a burning playing card lying next to the body.
Oh, really?
And we'll get there, I promise. But I've got things to say about it. I want to leave it alone for a minute because that card only lands the way it lands because of what happened in the room for it. Something got put on trial in that room, and it wasn't Great Creed. Up, my know-it-alls. So, X-Men '97 Season 2, Episode 7, Strangeland Savage Heart. Dropped this morning, and I watched it taking notes in real time, which, I'll be honest, is a terrible way to watch anything you actually enjoy. And here's the problem I walked away with. I loved this. I also have a list of complaints about as long as my arm. And for a good while, those two things would not sit next to each other in my notes. It, it took me a minute to work out that they're not actually two things. Let me back up though, because I made a call while I was watching that I got wrong, and I think how I got it wrong is probably the more useful part. 14 minutes 51 seconds in, which is basically the midpoint of a 29-minute episode, Nightcrawler proposes the trial, and I wrote down that's a very ambitious for a 29-minute episode, and I meant it as more of a worry. You got to set up a trial, you got to establish stakes, you've got to give both sides a case, and you really got half a runtime to do it in. And then right under that, I wrote, I don't think they're redeeming Creed here. And this is going to be one of those episodes where the X-Men get to be the better men. And that second note is the one I want to take back. Not because they weren't better men, because the X-Men are the better men is a completely different episode from the one I got. That's the safe version. Okay, the heroes extend grace to somebody who doesn't deserve it. The grace is the point. Everybody feels good about the franchise. And that's not what this is. This is the show turning around and asking whether the grace works at all. Because think about who's actually in that chair. And if you don't know Creed, this whole thing is just a debate about a jerk. So quickly, he first shows up in Uncanny X-Men issue 299. The cover date I think was like April of '93 or something. And he's the son of Mystique and Sabretooth, two mutants, and he came out human. Now, I need you to sit with that, okay? What does that do to the central image of this franchise?
Yeah.
In '63, the machine has been kids' power comes in, the humans world would throw the kid away. That's Kurt. That's Rogue. That's every origin they've ever written. And Creed is that picture flipped completely over. The human kid that the mutant parents threw away, and what he built out of it was hate, and then a run at the presidency on the back of it. So when the show drags him into a and puts him on trial. The thing in the chair, that's not a man. It's the premise. It's the whole Xavier proposition asked out loud in front of us. Whether it survives contact with somebody who's genuinely not sorry. And then and then they do the hard
Yeah,
version of it,
yeah,
which
yeah, that's true.
they did not see
That's
coming
a good
because
point.
the way
That's
you write
sophisticated.
this is you make Exodus a straw man. You let Kurt give a beautiful speech, everybody learns a lesson, roll credits. That's not this. Exodus gets to be right. His case is that This man kills again the second you take the cuffs off, and the episode never undercuts him.
Yeah.
Doesn't hand him a villain line to discredit himself with. Doesn't
Man, that's so sad. I think this episode was so bad. It proves the X-Men are wrong again.
doesn't have him twirl. He just makes a good argument, and the show lets it stand. And Kurt is over here defending him out of faith, out of
I think Kurt was just defending him because it's his brother.
this idea that you don't get to decide which lives count. And Kurt is also right. Both sides written to win, and you tried doing that in 29 minutes with a dinosaur fight in the middle of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And look at who they hand the gavel to, because that's the tell. Nightcrawler specifically asks for Colossus, and I think I know why, because Peter is an honorable man, and because Peter, underneath everything, is an X-Man. And what makes it cruel is that they load his grief in the same episode. The cold open puts us inside the Genosha attack. This time, instead of walking in afterward, that's where he loses the man. So the man they put in the judge's chair is carrying the freshest wound in the room, and Exodus is banking on it. Exodus stages this entire thing on the assumption that Peter's rage is a lever he can pull. And what a fool he was. Like, seriously, like, well, that's just the dumbest choice. This is not who Colossus has ever been. Colossus is my favorite X-Man, and this is exactly the reason. The metal is the least interesting thing about him. That outer carapace pales next to the strength of his heart and his convictions. And yeah, he's running with the acolytes here. And by the way, look at those costume designs. That's the Asteroid M look, pulled straight out of X-Men Volume 2, issue number 1 from 1991. Fabian Cortez, the whole crew. Yeah, he's turned on people before, usually for reasons you can follow if you're paying attention. But it has always been in service of protecting somebody who couldn't protect themselves. Exodus read the armor and miss the man completely. Then the fight, and I have to be honest, I was ready to be smug about this one because Exodus comes at Nightcrawler with a sword, and my note is literally, my boy, you have no clue what you're about to get into. And then about 4 seconds later, I remembered that Exodus can teleport too, which I had completely forgotten, and it makes the whole thing so much better. Now they're both sort of blinking around each other mid swing. It turns into a sort of a Dragon Ball fight, and it's wonderfully executed. Somebody in that room knew this material cold. Here's where it gets good, and I want to go slow because the order of the beats is the whole thing. Kurt wins. He makes his case. It lands. You can feel the room turn. And then Graydon Creed pulls a gun, shoots Exodus right there. Seconds after a man stood up and argued he was
Yeah.
worth saving.
That was crazy, man. That was crazy.
Kurt looks at him and says, "You not fear me, but you are very much your parents." I was beside myself. That is such a powerful assertion because the violence, the saber tooth of him, the thing he has spent his entire life running from, turned out to be the one piece of his parents he actually got, and the humanity he wears as his whole identity is not what pulled that trigger. So the defense was right in principle, and the prosecution was right in practice in the same room about the same man in the space of about 10 seconds, and the show
Good
does
point.
not clean that up for you. It just leaves it there. And then Peter rules, and his ruling isn't about law at all. He tells Kurt flat out, Kurt wouldn't have convinced him. But and he hands the verdict to a dead girl. That's the best writing this show has done, and I don't think it's even close.
Hmm.
Which left me chewing on something because franchise television doesn't usually do this. Franchise TV flattens the bad guy. Okay,
Yeah.
flat is safer and flat moves merchandise. So why can this show do the other thing? And I went looking, and honestly, the first place I ended up was the credit card on this very episode, written by Brian Ford Sullivan and Bo DeMeo. Now, DeMeo created the show, and Marvel fired him roughly 2 weeks before season 1 ever aired. He also wrote a big chunk of season 2, and he said publicly he did no production rewrites afterward, which tells you Sullivan is the one doing the punch up here. But the name held on this one, and once I started reading what DeMeo actually said on the record about writing this thing,
It's a pretty good
it
run.
felt like a swing and started looking more like an assignment. Back in 2023 at Marvel's own 60 Uncanny Year event, standing on Marvel's stage, DeMeo said the company was interested in what his experience as a black gay man was going to bring to the story they were telling. Now, that's not a leak. That's not somebody's hot take. That's Marvel describing the
Mm.
job. And then there's Genosha. He told the Advocate that he built Genosha out of Pulse, the club in Orlando. His words, he partied there, it was a club, and it was like Genosha, a safe place for him and everyone like him. He wrote a sanctuary for people like himself, and then it burned to the ground on screen because he'd already watched that happen. And then there's the piece I keep turning over, and I'm not entirely sure what to do with. In the Vanity Fair profile that ran at the top of this month, talking about his own time at Marvel, he says, I thought I was in a safe place, and then quickly found out that I was not. Same words he used for the club, same words he used for Genosha. And I really want to be careful here because I am not telling you the show meant anything by this. I'm telling you what's on my screen. This episode, the one with his name still on it, opens by walking us straight back into Genosha. That's it. That's all I have. That's all I got on it. But when a show turns around and makes you feel something for a man who built a hate group, that capacity came from somewhere. And the somewhere is a room where a guy had been asked to put his own experience of being on the wrong side of that line into the work. And I'd add this because it's the thing that made all of it sort of really click for me. What we're actually watching here is a bottle trial, a courtroom argument about whether a person counts as a person staged inside a show that is otherwise about people hitting each other. That's a straight line from the measure of a man, which works out nicely because I'm covering Strange New Worlds tomorrow, and the reason those two things live on the same channel is that the unit here was never the franchise. It's the craft. Same job, different uniforms. All right, so if the trial is that good, why did I come out of this arguing with myself?
Mm.
This is really the part I didn't put together until I went back through my notes because it isn't one complaint, it's four, and they all have the same shape. Every one of them happens outside the trial. Start with the cold open. Killing Yelena is cheap, and I want to be specific because cheap is a lazy word if you don't put something under it. We basically get magic in this show so that we can lose her. She's a cameo, brought in to be spent, and her death exists to load a gun for somebody else's art. That's a real cost, and the episode never really pays back to her. Then Bishop, and this one I actually got wrong in the moment, so let me show you the work. Bishop gets caught mid-cycle when the inhibitor kicks on. And if you know his powers, that's a smart setup because this thing is two-phase, absorb, then release. Cut off the release, and it just keeps stacking up inside him with nowhere to go. And I wrote down live, they've added a time clock to everything that's pretty decent storytelling, I suppose. And then I got to the end of the episode, went back, looked at that note, and no, it isn't. Because the clock detonates nothing. He eventually lets it go. He gets a one-liner about going out with a bang, and that's your payoff? Nothing was ever actually at risk. Nobody had to choose anything because of it. It doesn't bend the plot one degree, and that makes me wonder whether the clock was ever in the original script or whether it's a note somebody gave. We need urgency in the middle here, and then it kind of got lost. In the rewrite and the edit, maybe all the way back to the animatic, I genuinely don't know, but the tell is you could lift it out clean and lose nothing. Then the buttons at the end, plural, all of them scattered, and then the title, which I keep coming back to, Strangeland and Savage Heart. It's a word flip on Savage Land and Strange Heart. The two-parter from the original series in the 90s finds Apocalypse on that temple floor, burned playing card next to him, and everybody's going to sprint at the obvious read, which is, let me kill them! I'm not going there, okay? 2 weeks ago, I made the case that the Gambit...
I think they might do a like reverse episode, like explain what happened. I think they did that like episode 2 or so.
Direction
Show the ending and then
that the show
explain
has been
why
laying
how
that
they
track
got to
in
the ending.
plain sight the whole time. And this is the receipt getting cashed. Fine. But I don't think this is a murder scene, or at least not only one. Apocalypse spent decades in the comics hunting for a new body. That's his actual pathology, to call it something. He finds a stronger vessel and then he moves in. And last week, we watched him bring Remy back as Death. So the read where Apocalypse reached for that body and something went wrong is at least as available as the read where Remy just won a fight. And here's my honest problem with all of it. Apocalypse Apocalypse cannot be dead. One of the heaviest villains in this franchise that does not go out in a post-credit scene. Okay, 2 episodes from a finale. So what is the scene actually doing? I don't know, man. I don't know. I've turned it over a few times and I don't have it. And I'd rather tell you that than sell you a theory. I don't believe. I'm not going past what airs. So there you go. Now you know. And if Doug's got the battle, you're halfway. You know it all yourself. What's the no index for X-Men 97 Season 2, Episode 7? Here's how it shook out for me. The trial is exceptional. Okay, the fight inside it is, I would argue, wonderfully executed. The verdict is arguably the best beat this series has ever
Yeah,
written.
yeah, it's a
The
good
movie
running.
that hands it to Ileana is the kind of thing that I didn't think this show had in. And on the other side of the ledger, a fridge to cold open.
And then Liana is dead, right? So it's an amazing thing. I don't know. I'm left confused after this. The X-Men always seem to be on the wrong side.
A clock that pays off nothing, buttons scattered across the last 2 minutes, and a title doing nostalgia work the episode never needed. And I went back and forth on how much to take off for that, and where I landed is that I'm not grading the wrapping. What this episode came to do, it did better than anything else in this run has done, and that puts episode 7 at a 9 out of 10 for me. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I don't know if I'll put it on 9. It left me confused. But let's see all the kids on Mystique. Let's quickly run through this one. Let's see how fast I can run through this one. Uh, Turn it up to like 1.5. Let's go through Mystique's kids.
Exactly. Welcome back, Nerd Squad, to another nerdy list. I'm Amanda McKnight.
And I'm Brie Room. Mystique is a character who's been around for years in the comics and has known Wolverine since the days of the Wild West.
Yep, she and Logan go all the way back to 1921. That is a lot of time. And just like her old friend Logan, Mystique has been busy. Neither evil or good, really. Mystique is all about doing what is best for her, which makes the idea of starting a family interesting for her character.
And yet, starting multiple families she has. Today we're going to be learning about just who's a part of the Mystique family tree as we count down the top 10 children of Mystique.
And be sure to stick around to the end of this list where we'll have some bonus content coming your way in the form of comment responses.
If you're a big Mystique fan and want to learn more about her, be sure to click over here to learn some more about those that she's betrayed in the comics and why.
Looking for even more of our nerdy content? Be sure to check out our Instagram page. It has just been revitalized and focuses on getting you tons of the newest nerd news and updates, as well as bonus behind-the-scenes content. Just search at Top 10 Nerd Official on Instagram and hit that follow button to stay informed with us.
All right, now let's get to counting.
Number 10, Gloria Brickman. Gloria was Mystique's adopted daughter while she was in the guise of Mallory Brickman. In fact, this secret identity for Mystique created a bit of a mystery, as we don't know if there ever was a real Mallory Brickman, or if Mystique had been impersonating her since she met Senator Ralph Brickman. It's possible that Mallory was simply a persona that Mystique created, and that never really existed without her, especially as their young, likely preteen daughter was revealed to be adopted. Gloria remained suspicious of her mother. She talked to a federal agent about her concerns when it came to her mom always acting strangely. Mystique herself appeared to be just using her family to help her get back at Sabretooth, who had kidnapped the love of her life's grandson, Destiny's grandson, Trevor Chase.
Number 9, Trevor Chase. Speaking of Trevor, let's talk about the little guy. This one might be a stretch, but just go with me on this one. We all know that Mystique and Destiny are like a thing. They're lovers, they're a couple, they're life partners. You get the point. As life partners, they share an extended family, so Destiny's descendants are also Mystique's in a way. So Destiny's grandson, Trevor Chase, is also Mystique's, sort of. Trevor is the son of Justine and Cole Chase, Justine being Destiny's daughter. Justine and Cole were friends with Mystique, and she looked after them after Destiny's death. They're all pretty much a family, so I'm saying that Trevor is basically a child of Mystique adjacent.
Number 8, Anna Raven. This is the daughter of an alternate Mystique in Destiny on Earth 797. His codename instead of Mystique was either Mystic or Mystique, which Mystique in French, which is weird because Mystique, you know.
Darkholme was married to Kurt Darkholme, aka Nightcrawler, making her Mystique.
Xavier
Yeah,
II,
these
son
are
of Mystique and Charles Xavier. However, one was likely erased from existence due to the fact that Charles accidentally killed his adopted mother, causing him.
Daughter of Mystique makes Magneto Mystique's son-in-law. A lot of marriage. Magneto and Rogue became lovers after it was discovered that Magneto's magnetic powers made him resistant to Rogue's absorption abilities. I don't know how romantic that sounds to me, but I guess it was nice for them.
And was created by Brian Michael Bendis and Stuart Immonen. Although he might be the
Oh yeah, the Wolverine and Mystique. Yeah.
As a lover, and Mystique headed out behind his back, using her shape-shifting abilities to hook up with other men and trying to conceive an heir. And Wagner, who was a member of the German nobility. Basically, this guy underperformed as a lover, and Mystique headed out behind his back,
Yeah.
shape-shifting abilities to hook up with.
This one she did with Nightcrawler's father was the guy from Days of Future Past. Is this all or something?
Zazel, who's this
Yeah.
the Nathan, super bad spooky guy. Mystique gets pregnant with Azazel's child, and she gives birth to the baby, being Nightcrawler. He was born with blue skin, yellow eyes, and a pointed tail, and if that doesn't scream mutant, I don't know what does. After he was abandoned, he was found by Azazel's lover and raised in the circus. His powers manifested around puberty, and he became the cool blue teleporting dude we know today. Also, fun fact, Mystique and Destiny were supposed to be his bio parents, but the Comics Code Authority prohibited the portrayal of gay or bisexual characters at the time. But it was really cool to see that, like,
Number 2, Rogue. Rogue is obviously one of the most well-known of Mystique's children and one of the most popular. Rogue first appeared in the comics in 1981 in Avengers Annual Issue Number 1. We would later learn that Rogue ran away from the hippie commune where she grew up after her mother's death. She would live life on her own for a time, her mutant powers manifesting before she met Mystique. Destiny had sent Mystique to find Rogue and recruit her to their cause, convincing her to join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. To both Destiny and Mystique, however, Rogue was always like their daughter. Mystique treated her as such, and despite all the wrongdoings she has committed in her past, has always done what she can to protect Rogue. In a way, Rogue probably received Mystique's best attempt at being a good mother, which, doesn't really mean a lot coming from Mystique, because she's a pretty terrible mother, but it's clear to see that Raven truly cares for her daughter, even when Rogue is focused on hating her mom's guts and wants nothing to do with her.
At number 1, Graydon Creed. Graydon Creed is the epitome of mommy/daddy issues. He was conceived through the utter seduction and bamboozlement as his mother Mystique seduced freelance assassin Victor Creed, also known as Sabretooth, while they were stationed in Germany. During this time, Mystique, while in her Raven persona, had taken on the identity of deceased German secret agent Lenny Zomber. The two became lovers and had Graydon together, though Mystique faked her own death in order to leave Victor and ended up giving Graydon up for adoption. Now, even though Graydon was born to 2 mutants, he was not a mutant himself, and this sort of fueled the rage inside of him. So in Graydon's later years, he carried this hatred for his parents with him, and it grew to encapsulate all mutants. He even went so far as to organize a group called Friends of Humanity, and though this sounds like a cute and catchy name, its purpose was very much the opposite. The group was opposed to the civil rights of mutants and committed terrorist attacks against them. Graydon was also a hopeful presidential candidate at one point, but never fully ascended to the coveted position.
Yeah, I think all they had to do was just out that his parents are mutants and it would be over, but I don't know why they went through that. Then he ended up killing that mutant. So it was the same.
Version of his mother Mystique as an act of revenge for the Friends of Humanity's part in the attack on Trevor Chase, the descendants of Mystique's lover Destiny. Thank you for watching. What are some of your favorite mutant families out there?
Yeah, so I guess Mystique only has like 3 kids in this timeline. Like Creed with Sabretooth, Nightclaps, and then she adopted Rogue, right? So I think it's that, and even the show kind of show that as well. All right, I'm out, guys. Subscribe, subscribe.